Nope. Yep. Ooh, just took a moment. Let's all take a few deep breaths, just at your own pace. If you want to make sound on an exhale, you're allowed to in this space. We're not in a vacuum. I want to give everyone a moment to reflect on something uplifting or wholesome that happened in your day today. Just to find that. It can be so small. And if anyone's willing to or wants to, just kind of popcorn style, both on Zoom and in person, you can unmute yourself, or just, if you're in person, just speak out loud if you want to share this uplifting moment or wholesome moment, and I'll repeat it in the mic for our Zoomers. I can start us off. The dogwood flowers are just everything to me right now.
The birds in the bird bath.
The birds in the bird bath. Mm.
My brother came to visit.
Oh, brother came to visit. Good. Oh, cat crawling into lap while trying to work. Connecting with friends, yeah. Completing my pulmonary, was that it? Test. Okay, I thought you said task. I was like, what is that?
Someone saying yes.
Someone saying yes. And let's see, we have a few in the chat. Thanks, chatters. A walk by the ocean, a walk in the woods, a cold water immersion from one of our Zoomer ocean swimmers. Yes, down in Santa Cruz. Hi, Michael.
Mock orange blooming.
Mock orange blooming. So it's always welcome within practice, within our day, to take a moment to reflect on an uplift, a wholesome moment. We're actually encouraged to do this in the original teachings. So you have the lineage permission to reflect on what is good. Is anyone new tonight? Any first timers? Welcome. Hi, I'm Gavrila. Yeah. And so the way this works is we'll sit in meditation with a little bit of guidance and then have a little break and then some Dharma talking and some Q&A to wrap up. So I hope you feel welcome. Yeah. I really like, before I practice, instead of waiting till the end, which we'll also do, to take a moment here before we really land in our practice to dedicate our practice already. So I just want to give everyone a moment to see internally, just check in internally and see if there's anyone you want to dedicate your practice to even before you do it. That might be a group of beings, it might be one being, they might be here, they might not be. Allowing yourself to offer it. And so as we move towards practice, I just want to remind everyone that you're allowed to choose different postures. You can sit. If body's in pain, at least while I'm in teaching, you're allowed to lay down, maybe better towards the back, I guess. You're allowed to stand if you're sleepy, even if you're not. And we practice in a nonverbal space, but that doesn't mean it's a vacuum of silence. So you're allowed to cough and sneeze. There can be a softness to us being here together, not a rigidity. I'm going to go ahead and start with a chant paying homage to the Buddha, the historical Buddha, and the one that lives within. If you know the chant, you can join me, and I'll actually share my screen and put up one of the chants so that if you want to follow along, you can. I believe someone in back will turn on. Oh, there we go. Action. Great. Let's see. Yeah, so we'll just start right here, the Namo Tassa, paying homage to the Buddha, bowing to the Buddha, and then we'll bow to the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, bowing to that which is awake, that which is unfolding, and all those who are with us in this bow. And then we'll move into our practice. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. I want to also bow to Dipa Ma, who we'll be talking about tonight, and if there's any other guides, ancestors that you want to bow to for your practice, feel free to do that internally. And so I'll offer a little bit of guidance to invoke our practice, and then we'll spend time in silence. It's an option to have eyes closed during practice, and even if you're someone who practices with your eyes closed, it can be really sweet at the beginning of practice, even to have a look around the room. It's an option to have eyes closed during practice, and even if you're someone who practices with your eyes closed, it can be really sweet at the beginning of practice, even to have a look around the room. It's an option to have eyes closed during practice, even to have a look around the room. You can see if that would feel good for you. Sometimes that allows in some level of safety for our animal body. And you'll know when it feels like time if your eyes have been open, if you want to close them, when it's time to do that. And another sweet way to ground into time and space, ground into this present moment, is to open to this soundscape that we're existing in. To let the ears receive sound near and far. You might even notice that there's sound outside of your body, and then there might even be sounds inside your body, like a gurgling belly or the sound of thoughts. And then we can drop awareness into the base of our body. Feel the way that our bodies are balancing on our cushions, the chairs, balancing on the earth. You might even notice there's this gravitational hug or pull, smushing us, guiding us to ground. Depending on the mind state you're coming in with tonight, this could be a really good place to anchor in attention, just in this contact of body on body, earth on earth, this downward motion of connection. And for those who maybe are a little too sleepy and downward pulling, it can be really sweet instead to bring attention to this space around the body. Perhaps you can feel the air on skin. You might feel the spaciousness of the room, the uplift of the body, the erectness of the body for those sitting. I'm guessing some folks in the room and on Zoom practice meditation, riding the breath, feeling the inhale and the exhale. I'll just offer a couple other ways to connect with breath if you want to do that in our practice tonight. So one sweet subtlety of the breath that you might be able to contact now or later in practice is that often the body moves with the breath. Sometimes we feel that at a specific spot, like the belly or the chest. And sometimes we can feel the whole body in a minuscule rocking with the breath. Another way you might connect with breath is bringing attention maybe to the feet or to the hands. Sometimes there we might feel like a pulsation or almost like a drum beat or a heartbeat. And we can feel that as breath, aliveness in the body. This dance of letting go of thought, and like a feather dropping to the ground, letting yourself land again in a place that exists in the present, the breath, the body. Awareness is already here. As we move towards the sunset of our meditation period, I would encourage you to notice this state that you might be experiencing right now. Maybe there's sleepiness or agitation, boredom. Maybe there's a lot of peace. I'm bringing wakefulness, mindfulness to this state of being right now. To close our sit, I'll begin to sing the heart mantra of Kuan Yin. I'm guessing many of you know it. The jewel at the heart of the lotus. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Last time. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Ringing the bell. All right, my dear community, thank you for your practice. We'll take 6 to 7 minutes of break, and we'll keep the hall silent and the chatting outside, and then we'll begin again at the beginning. Welcome back. It's really cool in the practice to feel how the room calms. Does anyone feel that? It's really so potent. So there's like part of me that's sitting here calmly, and there's part of me that's totally fangirling about who we're going to talk about. And so I'm just trying to let both of them exist at the same time. My poor partner has just been hearing me all like for the last weeks, just like Dipa Ma, Dipa Ma. So I'm excited to introduce her to some of you. I'm guessing some familiar with Dipa Ma? Yeah. Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Great. I'm at that moment where I'm like, everyone has to know. But before we get there, I want to start somewhere a little bit, kind of want to set the scene to bring Dipa Ma in. So maybe you heard me say in the meditation that awareness is already here. Awareness is already awareing. And in this practice, we're encouraged to become intimate with awareness. And awareness kind of guides us into the true mind, the mind that's beyond the chattering mind, the thinking mind. And there's a lot of similes that we're given for awareness, like a pond reflecting everything, like I'm thinking of like a still pond under a full moon, kind of like that. Or a mirror-like quality of awareness. I'm fidgeting, sorry. There we go. And usually with awareness, there's this like expansive quality, endless quality. Sometimes I think of it as like a sunset mind or a sunrise mind, the way our mind can kind of like expand and ease potentially when we see something as beautiful as a sunset or a sunrise. Spaciousness is another way to think about it. And this guidance, right, this guidance that the Buddha kind of uncovered to the liberated mind, it's available for everyone. It's kind of magical. It's for anyone at all. And oftentimes the path of the Buddha is described as against the stream, against what kind of is the societal norms. And so you might be familiar with the societal norms that actually encourage limitation of the mind, right? We don't exist where we're invited into this endless, spacious quality of being. There's often a lot of, depending on where you're from, I can only speak to America, right? You can or you can't. This is for you or it's not. You belong here or you don't. And some of these beliefs that are baked into culture are so old we don't even realize they come from somewhere. We don't even realize they're made up. They can be so rooted. And so sometimes as practitioners, that's the dance we're in, right? This smaller mind that's so affected by the causes and conditions of what it's been surrounded by. And then this offering of this liberated mind. So Dipa Ma, she was born in 1911 in in India at a time, which this is still true to a different degree, a very patriarchal, that's such a hard word for me, even though I'm leading a series in it, patriarchal and hierarchical system, right? Women had their place as householders, family tenders. I'm going to pull up a picture of Dipa Ma so you get to see her. And if whoever's in the back, I think it's Lauren or whoever's in back, if you can share the screen. Chuck. That's Dipa Ma. I kind of want to just leave her up. Let's just leave her up. I have many other pictures, but we'll stick with that one, bathing her in light. So I want to give a little bit of a historical context to Dipa Ma. So she was born Nani Bala Barua in the Chittagong region in India. And this region, it's like right on the border of Burma. And I don't know if it's still like this, but I guess at the time that at that point Nani was living there, there was this like total harmony of Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists living near each other. And the Buddhists that lived there, they were part of an unbroken lineage that led back to the Buddha. Like I think the only one that existed or exists, this like direct line to Buddha. So Nani Bala Barua, she was born to the Bengali Barua clan. I want to name her parents, Purnachandra Barua, her father, and Prasanna Kumari, her mother. And she belonged to a family she was the eldest of many siblings. I don't remember how much at that point or in her life. And she was born Buddhist. And something that we as Westerners don't often see. So in the West, Buddhism often reveals itself through meditation practice. In the East, oftentimes Buddhism is shown a lot more in like how people respond to community, chanting, offerings, supporting the monastics. Right? Dana's like this little cherry on top that Jen adds to the little talk. But in India, and I'm guessing in other countries as well, it's really this devotional practice of dana, of generosity, to keep the lineage alive and going. And so Dipa Ma was born to that. And there's some really cute stories. There's a book written on Dipa Ma that I just kind of want to like tuck under my pillow and hope that I memorize for forever. But it was cute. There's like some stories of like while the other little kids are playing and like making up house or whatever, Dipa Ma's like creating little altars and like being all devotional. So there was something from the beginning, but she didn't know how to meditate, and that wasn't happening. Definitely not when she was younger. And what was normal in her time was around 12 years old, she was married off. Yeah. So she was sent to marry a man who I think was about 2 decades older than her. And pretty soon after they got married, they moved to Burma. So she was pretty far from her family. And she was pretty distressed for a while, as you could imagine. Yeah. And I won't go into all the little details of that part of her life. Of course, you can read the book. Definitely read the book. But one aspect of her life that became really difficult was that it was really difficult to have children. And that's kind of expected as the householder, as the wife. I found it really beautiful because it sounds like through time, she and her husband really grew to love each other. So there was a really loving relationship, and it sounds like he was really encouraging and supportive of her. But she went many, many years without having children. And then when she actually got pregnant, she had 2 pregnancies that she lost. She had 2 children that died. And she experienced a lot of grief, of course, and sometimes physical ailments because of the grief. And at multiple moments asked her husband if she could learn to meditate. There was something in her, which I would guess all of us have to a certain degree to be here, some inclination, some searching, some trust that meditation might help her suffering. But he didn't allow her because of her householder tasks. It wasn't time yet. And then at some point, her husband suddenly dies. And her husband dies actually after she has her first successful child. So she did have a child, Dipa, and that's how she became Dipa Ma, mother of Dipa. And so by her mid-40s, she had lost 2 children and she had lost her husband. So to be a widow at that age with a daughter, no income, family, I think at that point her parents were dead. She was a wreck, a mess, totally physically in pain, sick, with a child to support. And she ends up having a dream of the Buddha reading, I think, a piece of the Dhammapada, one of his, one of the Buddhist canons, and she knows she needs to go learn meditation. And so, again, I just want to reiterate how against the stream this all is, right? She's a mother of a child, and she's like, I have to go meditate. This is so unheard of. In the monasteries, there's mostly men. Yet this Dipa Ma is like unstoppable. It has to happen. And through kind of like maybe some protective magic of her life, she ends up getting connected to a family friend of hers, Manindra, and he ends up teaching her meditation. And so just to place Dipa Ma in relationship to all of us, some of you have probably heard of the Western teachers like Jack Kornfield, Joseph Goldstein, Sharon Salzberg, Sylvia Boorstein. They're all students of Dipa Ma. So this lineage is really direct to us. So apparently, at age 53, Dipa Ma sits her first meditation retreat. And after 6 days of practice, she reaches the first stage of enlightenment. And I think after her second retreat, she reaches the second stage, and on and on and on. And what's really beautiful is that she had friends and family that were really inspired by her practice. And they're like, show us. There's so much description of how visceral and obvious the changes are in her. Like moving from a truly like ill, decrepit, I don't know, decrepit, but really like woman in pain to someone who is present and peaceful and awake and incredibly loving. The endless stories of the amount of love that people felt in her presence. So she doesn't just reach stages of enlightenment, her friends and family come along, and there's multiple stories of friends and family also reaching enlightenment. And I just want to reiterate, so she was born in 1911, we'll get to her death, but that's I think in 1989, something like that. So especially in Theravada Buddhism, right, we bow to the Buddha and we see the Buddha as this human that attained enlightenment 2,600 years ago. But here we have Dipa Ma, and, I could say and instead of but, and here we have Dipa Ma, a woman, a recent woman who was attaining enlightenment with many other people in her lineage attaining enlightenment. So we don't really, sometimes for me, the Buddha is so historical. But we have, and I'm sure there's so many other examples that I don't know, but to be in such intimacy with a woman, a recent woman, who found her way to enlightenment with pretty much no permission, with everything in her way, she found the liberative teachings of the Buddha. Her belief became that enlightenment is the purpose of human life, and that it's absolutely accessible for anyone and everyone to at least reach the first stage of enlightenment. Very doable. One of the kind of famous quotes of her is, "The whole path of mindfulness is this: whatever you're doing, be aware of it. Whatever you're doing, be aware of it." Which leads me to the next point, which is that Dipa Ma became, maybe one of her big celebrity acknowledgments is that she became the teacher to many, many, many householders. There was someone who described Dipa Ma as making the entire world her monastery. And she taught anyone and everyone to make the same thing happen for them. There's a story in the book of her teaching a woman, a mother who's at home with an infant, and helping the mother use every moment of nursing as her awakening, the feeling of it. Yeah, so people who couldn't even leave their house because of householder duties, no problem. Many accounts. Another thing that she taught was that we can't separate meditation from life, which is, it's a tricky thing, right? Like, I know for me, I sit on my cushion in the morning and then it's like, okay, here comes the day. But really letting it be life, letting meditation be life, awake to everything. So not only was she a teacher of householders, of lay people, but of course she was like an all-star in bringing women into practice. And not like just, here, luckily, many genders can practice meditation. In India, it's much harder with the responsibilities of women. And so for her to carve that path, not just for herself, but for other women is like, it's superhero level. So I want to read a couple pieces about her impact teaching women, or how people experienced her. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. So this chapter starts with a quote from her, which says, "I can do anything a man can do." Even as a widowed single mother trying to undertake her spiritual path within the confines of a patriarchal and hierarchical Buddhist monastic system, Dipa Ma never doubted that she could reach the highest goal. At that time and place, there was no such thing as a women's liberation movement. No other women behind her back, Dipa Ma simply liberated herself. She once remarked, "I have no fear. I am at peace now." Snaps. Before Dipa Ma began meditation practice, she was known to be anxious and dependent on others, given her personal and cultural background. It is astonishing that she became such a free thinker. She insisted, for example, that her daughter Dipa get a university education, and later was supportive when Dipa decided to leave her marriage. Dipa Ma acknowledged the difficulties of the women around her, but insisted that they too could walk the path to liberation. When you are born in this life, she told her student Priti Moyi Barua, you have to face many sufferings, especially if you are a woman. A woman's life is very difficult, but you need not worry about this. You must maintain your practice. You must not worry that you have to take care of your husband and children. If you are in the Dharma, everything will happen through it. Everything will be solved through the Dharma. There's a reflection from a Calcutta housewife who said she would lecture me. "You should not think that women are helpless. You are not helpless. First of all, you should get an education, and secondly, you should do service. If you take care of your economic condition, then you will be independent." And there's a lot of different examples in this book where monks go to learn from Dipa Ma. This is like unheard of. These monks would get criticized for going. They would say, "Why would you go learn from her? Why would you go learn from a woman?" And these monks getting to talk about how their practice totally flourished, how they started to experience things they'd only read about, and how they went on to open meditation centers. So lucky for the ones who would listen, the ones who would practice. Let's see. So there's a wonderful, wonderful teacher here in the West. She used to be based in Hawaii, and I actually don't know. I think she's mostly teaching online now. Michelle McDonald. Is someone any familiar? She's so wonderful. And so she got to have times where she was around Dipa Ma, or even co-teaching with her, it sounds like. She said this: at the time I met her, there were mostly male role models, male teachers, male Buddhas. To meet a woman householder who lived with her daughter and grandson and who was that enlightened was more profound than I can ever put into words. She embodied what I deeply wanted to be like. Although I was already quite committed to the practice when I met her, she made freedom seem attainable. She simply did it. It was not some intellectual idea. For me to be a woman householder and to see her as a woman householder, I immediately felt, if she can do this, I can do it too. She is like a lighthouse, a light I have oriented to when I have needed the courage to continue to walk the path. I just want to take a moment here to acknowledge, for those of us who have practiced in this lineage and maybe never seen a teacher who looks like us. It's something that some of us might assume, right? We don't always realize that depending on our identity. But for people who got to experience Dipa Ma as a teacher, right, as a possibility of enlightenment, and I'm just also really grateful that at this point, at least in the West, there's a myriad teachers, ones who hold different identities, and I hope that only grows. But how much that can do for the path, right? To see ourselves, to see this is possible. This isn't just a wish. This isn't just a magic trick. This is possible. So I just want to read, this I think is the last thing I'll read, and then I'll offer a few of her kind of highlighted teachings. This is the story of her death. It sounds like she was with her neighbor, Sandeep, really close to her death, and they went to call the doctor, but the doctor couldn't locate the doctor. So as they waited, Sandeep, he sat down next to Dipa Ma and began to massage her arm, and this is what he recalled. Then Ma asked me to touch her head, so I touched her head and I started chanting the suttas she taught me. When she heard me chanting, she bowed with her hands in prayer. She bowed toward the Buddha and did not get up. So we both lifted her off the floor and found that her breathing had stopped. She had died in her bow to the Buddha. Her face was very calm and at peace. So there's some lessons of Dipa Ma, and like I said, to go deeper with them. It could be really sweet to read her book or just see what you can find on her. I'm sure there's teachers who speak about her. Yeah, I think I'm pausing because there's a little part of me that by like reading some of the lessons, they almost feel like they could be like Hallmark or like, those like yogi teas. But this is really like it's like a simplistic download of what she really walked in life. And there's so many comments of how much she embodied these, how truly she was meditation. So the first one of the first lessons that she offers is really to stick with a meditation, one meditation, to stick with it and to go deep with one meditation. And I think in this day and age, right, it's tricky because there's like I always thought this about the Theravada lineage, which is the first one I kind of came into, well, maybe second. But it's a bit, it can be a bit ascetic, right? We're like silent, focus on your breath. So there's a lot of colorful practices outside, like in Buddhism and then also outside of Buddhism. And so it can be easy in this modern day to just kind of be at the buffet of spirituality. And she's really encouraging us, just like we do in practice, right? Can we find this home base? Can we settle into one practice and really let that be what our vehicle for taking us deep? And so it can be a good thing to pay attention to the mind that wants to taste everything and see what it might be like to settle in with one and just become aware of the mind that gets bored. And as I mentioned before, there's this teaching of one, meditating every day, but like she said, life is meditation. So that might be being aware of one in-breath and out-breath, right? Or noticing thinking during a day. But her teaching was always like there's time. Even householders who had full-time jobs and families to take care of, she really could always encourage them to find a moment to meditate. And kind of related to that is this piece that every situation of life is workable. The context of our lives is our awakening. Nothing has to be different. We're lucky enough, many of us can access retreat, these like little containers where we really can focus on practice. And that's so powerful for training, and we can practice knowing what it's like to wake up in life. Right? So that piece that the whole world is your monastery. Of the virtues to develop, patience was the main one she spoke about. There's this quote that your mind is all stories. I think she had this story of talking about like the matryoshka, the Russian nesting dolls, that you can take one thought and look inside of it, and there's another one and another one and another one and another one. And then when you get to the smallest one, it's empty. All stories. She was also really clear in her teachings that anger never, ever, ever, ever is it going to lead to anything wholesome to act out of anger. And that it's really our practice to cool the fire of our emotions. And that doesn't mean not having boundaries or being clear with our word, but not acting out of anger. That anger is fire. I think I'll end with one last one. Then we'll see if there's questions. I love this. She was a blesser. She blessed everything. There's stories of her even blessing a plane before she flew in it. Having a pilot student of hers bless the whole plane of people. And just all of the stories are how much she's just like, anytime anyone is sitting in front of her, she's blessing them and loving them and treating her with utmost respect. And that if we really bless things, it inspires us to be attentive to what's in front of us. So blessing as a way of our practice, it can be in a way selfish. Or self-full, maybe. Being attentive to every moment through blessing everything. All right. Fangirl can go on, but she won't. I'm going to take a little pause there. Just letting that settle. Feeling what it's like to meet Dipa Ma or get closer to Dipa Ma. And I want to open us up for any questions or comments. It looks like we don't have so much time. I'm sorry. But if you have a question, let me stop sharing. Great. We have the Zoomers up. So yeah, if you have a question on Zoom, you can raise your Zoomy hand and we'll call on you. And in the hall, just raise your human hand.
And then I'll pass the mic so the Zoomers can hear.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, comment in the hall.
And do say your name so everyone gets to meet you.
Hi, this is Amira. Thanks, Gavrila. I appreciated you starting with the chants and bringing us through the refuges. And I wonder if there's anything that comes to mind about Dipa Ma and refuge and offering that to people in suffering, since she attended to so much suffering in her own life. And I assume she continued as a layperson and not as, she
Not
was
a
never
monastic.
like a professional Buddhist. So just wondering, in that realm of refuge, that subject that is so at the heart of the practice.
Yeah. She did, I mean, I would say she became a professional teacher. I don't know what we mean, she just taught. I mean, people sought her out. She was never a monastic. But before I answer, I wonder if you're getting a hit about your question. Like, is there something that you're feeling about her, seeing about her in terms of refuge?
Well, a week ago, someone told me to read her book. I hadn't known about it. And it just, in this context, it puts the chant in a different kind of therapeutic place, that it's not said, it's not chanted by rote. It has a much deeper sense right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about this as another story I think Joseph Goldstein told about Dipa Ma, of like some celebratory party. She was known to not really socialize and mostly go inward unless she was teaching. It was very specific what she chose to put her energy on, but they went to, for some reason, it must have been some Buddhist party for something, and right when she got there, there were people eating and drinking and talking, and she just like beelined for the Buddha and bowed. And just this like priority commitment to truth. And that in her life and in her teaching, so much reiteration of the Buddhist teachings on non-clinging. There's nothing she can take with her. There's nothing to cling to. And so in these refuges, right, it's inviting us to become loyal to the wakefulness rather than what's happening, right? And to totally devote ourselves to the unfolding itself, to the truth of what's actually here. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, just one more. We're already pushing it. We'll see if there's even one more.
I can just say a word or two. I do appreciate it so much that you're bringing in to the lineage that we care about and belong to, a semi-unknown but highly belovedable woman teacher. I think it's good for all of us to know about her. Thank you very much.
And just to put a little shout out, because I don't think I'll be teaching before the series starts, but in mid-May we'll start the Buddhism Beyond Patriarchy series. I just want to be so clear that everybody is welcome. And I really hope we have a mixed group of identities and ages and abilities and all the things. And we'll be lifting other teachers that should be known, that we want to be known. So we'll be looking at really wide system views of folks that are really changing access to the Dharma, and we'll look into really subtle views of how our own practices, every single one of our practices, might have been unconsciously affected by limited oppressive systems. So, yes, two more. All right, folks, let us dedicate our practice. So, I want to first say, may we all benefit from all the ancient and not that ancient Sangha, those who have protected these teachings and have realized the truth of life. May we all feel the ripples and the potential of awakening. And may these ripples carry out beyond us into future generations, into past generations, to those who haven't even been born yet, and to those who are now our ancestors. From the teeniest, tiniest little beings to the salamander who I met today on the trail who didn't have a tail, to the biggest creatures, to the creatures we don't even know that they exist, to those who still believe that they're not included in Sangha, and to all of those who feel very included in Sangha. Excluding no being and including ourselves, may all of us feel so deeply nourished and nurtured. May we all feel so safe and warm. May we all be totally at ease, and may we feel the freedom of suffering, the end of suffering. Thank you all. See you again soon.
If you're on Zoom and you'd like to say goodnight, please unmute yourself and do that. Thank you so much, Gavrila.
Thank you,
The rest of us-
Gavrila. That was lovely. Good night, everyone.